Welcome, everybody, to the Making Money Personal podcast. I'm Liz, here with Terry.
Hello.
And we're super excited for today's guest. So in this episode, we're going to be talking Medicare Made Simple. And our special guest is AJ Lemarier. Welcome, AJ.
That was pretty good. Most people butcher the last. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Good to be here with you guys today.
Thank you so much for coming out.
I've been with Triangle for a little over a year now. I've been in the industry for a couple. And my role is really to sit down with members, whether they have questions about getting started, whether they have questions about college funding, or getting ready for retirement, and making sure that they can retire on time and retire with dignity. Just having conversations on planning for the future.
So one of the questions that we have is, why is Medicare planning so important for people today? You know, there's got to be a lot of ins and outs about it. So if we can kind of just clarify a little bit about what makes planning for something like this so important to the everyday individual.
Well, absolutely. I think for most folks, they don't have to think too heavily about medical coverage throughout most of their life because they have whatever their employee-sponsored benefit packet is. So they're used to picking something and then typically not thinking about it until the employer makes a change. Now, medical costs will go up, especially in retirement, because we typically have more medical events or things that we need. So it's important to take a look at, one, what your coverage options are, and start early. Analyze, by going to either Medicare.gov or the Social Security Administration website, or maybe talking with an independent financial advisor. Working through what are your options and making sure you understand what you have coverage for and what you don't, so that you're never left at the hospital going, wait, what do you mean? How much do I owe?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So getting ahead of this and planning in advance is just it's establishing that foundation, so you're not really shocked, right? You're not surprised
Exactly
when something does happen. Okay. So how about who is eligible for Medicare, right? At what point does this start in someone's financial journey?
Absolutely. So there are 3 groups that are really eligible for Medicare. One is the group everyone knows. It's age 65 or older. That's when you officially become eligible for the basic Medicare. Then there's the group of folks that maybe they're already taking Social Security income benefits because they have a qualifying disability. And as long as they've been disabled for more than 2 years and taking that Social Security DI, that disability income, they are eligible to start receiving Medicare benefits. The last group is those that are diagnosed and are in end-stage renal failure or have ALS. They would also qualify. And for all of those groups, the caveat is they have to be a U.S. citizen, or at least they have to be a permanent resident for consecutive 5 years before signing up. Those are the big caveats.
Okay.
Great. So just following up with you, we all know that it does sound very overwhelming. And so what I think I want to go back just to what you said a little bit earlier, AJ, is that try to make yourself aware, or try to give yourself a little bit of insight. So you're going to be looking over these materials yourself, and then reach out to an independent financial advisor, planner for the questions that you have.
Right.
That's what I heard you. Okay.
Absolutely. It's not required to, but many folks will go consult someone again, it has to be an independent agent, because you can go talk to a specific carrier.
Right.
And we'll get into the different kinds of Medicare plans, but there are different carriers for the Part C, the Medicare Advantage plans. You want to talk to someone who's independent, because you don't want to just see one company's version. You want to see all of them to make sure you're making the right decision for yourself.
Great. That's awesome. Well, that actually segues right into my question, because my question is that Medicare has many parts, and you had just alluded to C. So there's A, B, C, D. Can you break those down for us a little bit?
Absolutely. First, compliance will have me if I don't say this. So I want to say that any of the information we covered today, it's for educational purposes only. It's not meant to be a formal recommendation, because everyone's situation is different. So when we're going through this, take it as a good jumping off point for your own education and then your own conversations with that independent advisor. But as far as the plans breakdown, parts A, B, C, and D, A is the hospital coverage. It's when you're staying at the hospital, you have a qualified nursing visit, maybe it's hospice care. Some forms of at-home care are covered, and it really depends on what you're talking about. And again, you want to get into the specifics of that on the website. But Part A really covers that, the hospital insurance. Now, for most people, they're actually not paying anything for that Part A coverage as long as they qualify for Social Security. So with that, you'll see the threshold is 40 quarters, which sounds kind of strange, but it's really 10 consecutive years of working.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you've worked for 10 consecutive years, you've been contributing for each of those quarters into Social Security, through Social Security tax. You qualify for the Social Security income side, but more importantly, you're qualifying for the Medicare piece. So that Part A is the hospital coverage. So Part B covers outpatient care, it covers doctor's visits, and Part B typically costs the same across the board. It's going to be about $185 as of filming today in 2025. And costs can go up depending on if you're considered to be a high income earner.
Okay.
There's something called ERISA. It starts with an E, ERISA. And it's, some people call it a fee, some people call it a penalty, but basically there's income thresholds. If you earn above it, there's a slightly higher cost to Part B. Part C is what I just alluded to earlier, which is the Medicare Advantage plans. These are plans that are through independent insurance companies. They'll usually bundle Part A and B together. And then they'll typically, or many of them will also bundle Part D, which is the prescription drug coverage. Every company has its own little caveats. They have their own little nuances. They'll have some incentives as far as, hey, if you go with us, in addition to everything you get in Parts A, B, and D, we're also going to throw in these extra little benefits. But Part C is always through independent carriers. And then again, Part D is the prescription drug coverage.
Okay, great. So how does the original Medicare compare to Medicare Advantage?
So as with everything in life, some advantages, some setbacks. When we talk about going through and getting the traditional Medicare, a lot of people will also couple it with Medigap, and we can talk through what that is. But they'll have Parts A, B, and then they'll also typically elect D so that their prescription drug coverage is covered, because
Right.
prescription drugs
Yes.
can run up a tab.
Yes, they can.
But oftentimes what you'll see is the traditional Medicare has a lot of flexibility nationwide. There's not a lot of restrictions on what doctors or what's inpatient versus outpatient. Now, when you talk about that compared to Medicare Part C or C, Medicare Advantage plans, you'll find that they have typically lower premiums, so it's a little less costly, but there's also, they have those in-network providers. So when you're comparing those plans, you really want to make sure, if you're going with a Medicare Advantage plan, that the company you choose, the doctors you want, the prescriptions that you need to take, and just in your area, they have the appropriate coverage.
Okay.
So does Medicare cover everything, or are there certain gaps that people need to plan for?
Now, there will be gaps. Things like hearing aid, vision, dental, there's going to be gaps that unless you've purchased an additional piece to cover those, it's not going to be included in most of the plans that you see.
So people have to get that and like as an additional plan through an independent provider?
There can be coverage that's provided through Medigap, or again, different Medicare Advantage plans will have different incentives.
Okay.
So some of them will cover for an additional cost, of course.
Yeah.
Some of them will cover things like the hearing aids and vision care, dental care, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
At this time, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll hear a word from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
This holiday season, make checkout merry and bright. Add your Triangle Credit Union debit card to your mobile wallet and breeze through your gift shopping with ease. It's fast, secure, and contactless. And with just the tap of your phone, you're on your way. Whether you're grabbing gifts, stocking stuffers, or holiday treats, enjoy smooth checkout at major retailers and anywhere Tap to Pay is accepted. Visit trianglecu.org to learn more.
Welcome back, everybody. We're chatting here with AJ about Medicare and Medicare 101.
All right. So the next question is about costs, which is kind of right. No one wants to talk about that. But we know that it can be very concerning, especially when you're looking at, as you age, you're on a fixed income and all that other stuff. So can you explain premiums, penalties, and any help that might be available to people who are about to go through this process?
Absolutely. So I talked a little bit about that for Part A. As long as you have a qualifying number of years of work experience, you or your spouse, that's an important caveat. Because granted, fewer and fewer these days because things are so expensive. But there are households where there's only one full-time working parent. Mm-hmm. And so as long as one of the two spouses has had a qualifying number of years, they would both qualify for Medicare and Medicaid Advantage plans. So Part A is typically free. Part B is, again, around that 185. There can be penalties for earning too much, and typically they go 2 years back and look at the tax return for that ERISA penalty or fee. Now, there are also, for lower income situations, there are also some additional help that can be available. Thresholds change every year, so it's important that if you think you might fall into that group, again, do the homework. Go to Medicare.gov, go to the Social Security Administration website, do a little bit of research as far as what the income thresholds for extra help, for the normal cost, and for those that earned a couple extra bucks, what that might look like.
Right.
One important thing to note is penalties. So we talk about, and we'll get a little bit into open enrollment, when people should enroll, what are as far as what are the caveats to that. But for those that decide to not take Medicare right at 65, they need to have qualified coverage. There's actually penalties for having a gap of time where you're not covered by some medical insurance. For Part B, every year you don't have coverage after 65, it's a 10% increase in the actual cost of the coverage. So, 185, well, you delay a year and let's say the base is still 185 next year, well, just went up $20 a month. For Part D, that prescription drug coverage, if you don't have coverage after the age of 65, for every month you delay, it's a 1% increase compounding in cost.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, what's important is many folks, whether because they have to, or maybe because they choose to, because they don't want to retire before 65. Mm-hmm. They like what they're doing. They don't want to, they don't want to stay at home. I mean, right now, my mom loves my dad, but now that he's retired, man, she's looking for projects and things to get him out of the house. And we both love him, but sometimes he pokes her. But there's, when you're going to work past 65, you're probably still going to have eligible benefits as long as you're working full time. You want to make sure you have good documentation that you work fully covered through qualified benefits during the time period between 65 and the time you retire. And that should be fairly easy to do. You pull a proof of coverage every year, or talk to your HR person.
Right.
I used to work for a private school district for a couple of years, and as the business administrator, basically everything ran through my office. So I had several employees when it's like, hey, I got to show them proof so that they don't whack me with penalties. Right. And that's a very easy report to run. So you can ask your HR person or the point person to go to.
Okay. Cool. I have a follow-up question. So in a situation, AJ, where you're 65 and you're still working, can you take the Medicare coverage and if it's available through your employer, do you have to take it through your employer, or can you take the Medicare coverage?
That's a great question. No, you don't.
Okay.
A lot of times when we're planning with folks, as they're approaching 65, we start to look and we say, okay, based on what coverage you need, based on what coverage your family might need, and typically at that point it's usually just you and a spouse.
Right.
You compare what does it cover and what does it cost. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it does make sense to discontinue your work benefits and at 65 pick up Medicare.
Right.
And then it's just making sure that you go through one of the open enrollment periods, because there's only windows of time. There's special enrollment periods, but then there's usually only windows of time where you're able to enroll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, that was our next question.
Oh,
it's
there
like,
we go.
when do these windows of time occur? Is this a yearly thing? When should people plan on signing up?
It's a great question. So if you plan on taking it at 65, typically it has to take place within 7 months of that birth date. Okay. You can go in and elect. Now, that has to fall into one of the enrollment periods that you're looking at. So if you're looking at annual enrollment for Medicare and the Medigap program, you're going to be looking at October 15th to December 7th. Every year you can elect and then go back in and re-elect. And that's important. A lot of people think it's going to be like a set it and forget it. But your needs will evolve over time. So this should be something where at least have a touch touch base, check in with yourself and say, hey, everything going the same? All right, I don't need to change it. But make sure that you know, is this plan still going to be the right fit? And then when you're looking at Medicare Advantage plans, that's typically from January 1st to March 31st. That's when that open enrollment for Medicare Advantage plans is, and people will make the decisions right around there.
And you said that was before age 65? Do you want to do that before age 65,
See,
or do you wait until after age 65?
You can do it within 7 months of turning 65.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either plus or minus.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the special events. So if it's you're not initially enrolling, or you're not re-enrolling, if you end coverage and it's outside of one of those time periods, but you retire, it's April, you're months away, you get what's called a special enrollment period, where your qualifying event is losing coverage through your former employer. Okay. That's when you can go in and requalify. And you should always, before the date you need that coverage, be getting your ducks in a row, doing your homework, so that things are in process and it's not, hey, I lost coverage yesterday, what do I do?
Right.
Okay.
Don't want to be in that spot.
Right. I have to tell you, as I'm sitting here, I'm chuckling to myself a little bit, because you had alluded to you have to do it every year. And I'm thinking to myself, darn it, I just got done FAFSA forms for my daughters, right? And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to like have this, lull. And now I'm like right back in it again, where it's like, no, I got to do it every year, every year. It's a few years off, but still, it'll be here before you know it.
Thankfully, unless your situation changes, or unless you're anticipating a change, most people typically aren't shifting around too much year to year. But it's always good just to do a pulse check.
For sure.
Make sure that you're still in the thing that has the best fit. And sometimes that's doing your own homework. Again, Medicare.gov, great resource. Social Security website, great resource. Or if you work with an independent financial advisor, an independent insurance agent that covers that, schedule a 15-minute phone call with them and just say, hey,
that's a great idea.
Here's what I have going on. Should I be thinking about any changes, or are there any changes to what's out there that would be a better fit, be better for what my goals are?
Yeah, no, that's great.
And it's usually a pretty easy check-in.
Yeah. It's so funny too, AJ, because, when I think of, like the whole financial planning piece or wellness, or financial wellness, rarely do I think about insurance. But it's so important to have that conversation with somebody who's knowledgeable about what's going on.
I mean, I'm biased. I would absolutely agree with you. But in all seriousness, when we look at planning for the future, a lot of times people will focus on the exciting part of financial planning, which is, hey, how do I grow my money? How does my money
compound
make me
interest,
money?
the eighth wonder of the world.
Absolutely. That's important. I'm not going to say otherwise. But it's like building, when we're building for the future, it's like building a house, and we need to make sure there's a solid foundation.
Right.
If we don't have proper protections, whether it's during our working years or in retirement, one event could wipe out years worth of good work.
That's right.
Yeah.
We need to make sure, you could call it the foundation of the house or the guardrails on the highway. Mm-hmm. But we need to make sure that something's keeping us on track, so that even if we hit a bump in the road, we hit the railing, we don't fall in the ditch.
That's great. Right. That's a great illustration. Yeah. So with all of these options, how does someone figure out what's right for them, AJ?
When you're looking at the different options, looking through the different plans, it's important to really take stock of what are your needs going to be. When having this conversation, you should be looking at, are the doctors that I like, the doctors I trust, the doctors I don't want to give up, are they included with the provider that I'm going with? Mm-hmm. Whether it's the Medicare plan or the Medicare Advantage plan. Does it cover the prescription medications that I want or need? Does it cover things like travel? A lot of times with the traditional Medicare and Medigap plans, one of the biggest open gaps, I would say, in that is that it doesn't cover any medical costs that happen internationally. So if you're someone that I want to be a jet setter in retirement, right. I've worked all these years, I'm going to go to Alaska, I'm going to Australia, I'm going to do the Mediterranean. If you're going to be doing a lot of traveling, at least for those go-go years, those years where you're going to be out abroad a lot, a Medicare Advantage plan might make more sense, because typically a lot of those will have external U.S. coverage. So if you're going to be doing a lot of traveling, especially abroad, mm-hmm. that's an important consideration. So you want to know, what doctors do I want, what medications am I going to need, and then what's my travel expectations.
Right.
And those are all important factors when deciding which plan's going to make the most sense. And you want to look at what each plan offers, both the benefits and maybe some of the drawbacks, and just compare apples to apples to make sure that the cost fits your budget and that the coverage fits your needs.
Nice.
Good.
Wow. So there's a lot of information regarding this whole topic. I feel like we could like drill down so deeply into all of these categories here.
If we got into the weeds on every piece
Yeah.
that we just discussed, I did a very high level overview. And it's because honestly, people would start falling asleep if I got into the weeds on every single piece, and this would be a much longer video. But this is meant to be a high level overview of what to start thinking about, what questions to ask, where to look, so you can start really addressing what is the plan that makes the most sense for me, because everyone has a unique situation. There's no one size fits all solution, and that's true. That's true with Medicare. That's true with financial planning, and honestly, most of life.
Yeah.
So the important thing is start early, do your homework, and also know that things can legislatively change. Right now, we're keeping a heavy eye on Social Security with some of the funding projections that are for if that program will continue its funding over time, or if they're going to need to change it. It looks like they might. Medicare might also be part of that, because the two biggest costs in the U.S. budget right now are Social Security income and Medicare. Those are two of the biggest ones right there. I think defense is up there with them.
I was thinking that too. Defense might be in there somewhere.
It's either those three are the top three. I'm almost positive. But they're expensive programs. Obviously, they're important programs, but we need to make sure that we keep an eye as things evolve and change legislatively.
Yeah. So for those interested in doing their own homework, where are some of the resources that you would recommend they go? I mean, you mentioned a couple already, but maybe just to recap, like what's available for people who are initiating this process?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So definitely, and you've heard me say it a couple times, Medicare.gov, huge resource. Walking through and just seeing, okay, what do they have available? What information's there? And where can you start comparing some of the plan options? The Social Security Administration, their website, also does a good job at providing some of the information and the options. A lot of folks will also choose to work with a financial advisor or an independent insurance agent. And with working with those, you want to make sure you're working with someone who's independent. I might have mentioned it earlier, but you don't want to work with an insurance agent that's just representing one company, because they might be the best option out there, but if they aren't, you're not really going to know, because they're going to be incentivized to push that one provider.
Right.
You want to work with someone who's licensed with all of the major carriers and who's not incentivized to push one or the other. It's like compare apples to apples and know what you're getting.
Right. What about your contact information, AJ? How do people get a hold of you?
There are days where, whether it's the Franklin Street location or the location on DW South Nashua or over in Merrimack, you could find me in there a couple days a week.
Awesome.
Certainly happy to share my contact information with folks, just so that, whether, I don't know if we could post it with the video.
Okay, so I just grabbed my phone and we are going into the rapid fire segment. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, and I don't know if Liz prompted you on what rapid fire was, AJ. Do you know what this is?
I was told about 30 seconds before we went live that this was
full deer in the headlight look I got from AJ.
Great, awesome. So basically, I'm going to do an either or, give you two different options, and then you just, whatever you're thinking, like whatever applies first, you just shout it out. If you want to elaborate, you can. If you don't want to, that's fine too.
He looks so concerned right now.
You will get the hang of it, I promise. Okay. I've got like three different sets of questions here, so I'm just trying to figure out which one would be best for AJ. Okay, ready, AJ? Here we go. Hampton Beach or North Conway?
Oh, that one's tough.
This is going to be a long segment.
Do we need the Jeopardy music?
Yeah, right.
North Conway.
Yeah.
I love going up to that area and exploring the mountains.
Same. Game night or movie night?
Game night.
Nice.
Yep.
Steak or seafood?
A well-cooked, not well-cooked steak, like a nice medium rare steak cooked perfectly. Perfect.
History Channel or True Crime TV?
Oh, these are good questions. History Channel.
All right, nice. Staycation or vacation?
Oh, vacation. Gotta go explore.
Sneakers or sandals?
Sneakers.
Tea or coffee?
We have a Boston office, and it's right outside of the Boston Tea Party Museum. That's how I feel about tea. Throw the tea in the harbor.
Tea in the harbor.
Throw the tea in the harbor, and I'll take all of the coffee.
Same. Skiing or snowmobiling?
Ooh, skiing.
Pizza or tacos?
Pizza.
Last question. Fiction or nonfiction?
Ooh, is it bad if I say nonfiction?
Not at all.
No, fiction. Which one's? Oh, fiction. Fiction. I changed my answer. I honestly, I love historical fiction where it weaves in like historical events, but also throws a little extra, pizzazz in it, because sometimes historical events can be a little dry.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
for
exactly. Sure. Yeah, the other day I was reading a really great book, and I was explaining it to my husband, and I think he ended up creating a whole new genre because he called it plausible fiction. I was like, that's actually an accurate description of this book. So plausible fiction.
Plausible fiction.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, that's it. And we want to really thank you, AJ, for coming on, and you shared so much great information. I'm sure that our listeners are, writing down notes. And of course, Lizzie, you can kind of explain where to find the notes, or they're going to be on the bottom of the podcast.
We'll put it all in the show notes. So
Fantastic.
they can follow links, they can go right to your webpage, they can go to
Perfect.
they can get your number, all that stuff.
If folks are curious where they're at in their financial life, we have this great tool. It's a 14-question financial wellness quiz. It takes 90 seconds. It's really helpful to gauge across the 5 core areas of your financial life where you're at, how you're doing. Green light means you're doing exactly what you should be. Yellow light means, hey, maybe we take a look at this. Red light means you should be calling me and we should be sitting down for a conversation. But it's a really useful tool just to gauge, where am I at today?
All right. Well, thank you,
much,
AJ.
Absolutely. Pleasure being here with both of you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Like it.
Talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Making Money Personal podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at tcupodcast@trianglecu.org or reach out to us on social media. Thank you to all of our subscribers, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new episodes or money tips. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.